Hey, what's going on, Chants fans? My name is TJAY Jones, and thank you for tuning in to the Too Teal Podcast. This is a podcast that covers Coastal Carolina football. And Coastal Carolina is in week number 3. They're taking on the Duquesne Dukes, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that the Chants need to do in order for them to get their second win of the season. But before I get started, a little something about me. I am a sports writer. I've been writing for about 2 years. I started off with a podcast entitled the State of the Saints podcast, where I cover my hometown team, the New Orleans Saints. I've got my credentials from the NFL media. I got opportunity this season to go to the Senior Bowl, the NFL Combine, and just want to kind of, shed light on so many talented guys for the Coastal Carolina football team, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I mean, we know how talented this team is, and we definitely want to make sure that the entire world knows about it as well. But once again, the Chants have a big-time matchup, week number 3, taking on the Duquesne Dukes. This is the second of 3 straight home games. The victory last week versus Jacksonville State got the Chants on a winning track. Week number 1, they took on UCLA, and they did some really good things. We know that Coastal Carolina, they were very opportunistic in that game. There were some opportunities where they could have pulled off the upset, but there were some things that the Chants needed to work on. Of course, we know about some of the red zone issues that they had. Them not coming away with touchdowns instead of field goals. 2 of 7 on the year in the red zone. Also, the running game. The running game is trying to get back on track. And, of course, that was the question and the concern among the media and Chants fans about the running game of Coastal Carolina. Of course, we've seen some offensive efficiency last week. Grayson McCall bouncing back from that game from UCLA, where it was very unconventional of him. He got back on track. We know that Grayson McCall, a really good quarterback, a multi-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. He completes high percentage passes, right, over 60%, throughout his career. So we know that he is extremely talented, and we know that Tim Beck is bringing in a new offense, so it's going to take a little bit of time in order for everybody to get on track. But Tim Beck, the head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chants, spoke to the media, and of course that was the question. What does he feel about the running game, and is it a concern at this particular time?
Actually, I thought the offensive line itself did a pretty good job blocking. It's just the way they structured their defense with this, I call him the Joker, a defensive back, kind of monster back guy they played, which we hadn't really seen. He made a lot of he had 18 tackles, and a lot of them were right at the line of scrimmage. He did a good job of getting down there and doing that. He's an unblocked hat. We're one-on-one with the back on him. But at the end, we had to run it. They knew we had to run it. We were eating up the clock, and we had 2 first downs and ended the game on the field. So like I said, I think there are some positives. Do we want to try to rush for 200 and 300 yards a game? Yeah, everybody does, but they're also trying to stop that. I think teams are trying to make Grayson throw the ball and see how he does with that.
I can understand why Coach Beck isn't really concerned. I mean, we're only, 2 games into the season. The Chants are going into their 3rd. So it's not really alarming right now, right? I mean, that you have some talented backs on the team. You got Angel Reese on the team. You got Braden Bennett, and you also got CJ Beasley. So, I mean, you got some really good, talented running backs. And we know that the offensive line, they did an outstanding job last week. But you also have to take into account the talent of Jacksonville State, who are very, very stout up front. They're a very, very disciplined football team, especially defensively. So those opportunities to run the football were few and far in between. But like Coach Beck alluded to also in his press conference, he talked a little bit about, him not being genuinely concerned about it, and they got opportunity to, milk the clock a little bit in the 4th quarter when they got the lead. In order for them to seal the deal, they had to get 2 first downs, and they got it through the running game. So that's a positive. So, it's going to take some time in order for the Chants offense to start to mesh a little bit. You got some guys that are some layovers from the last coaching regime, of course. And now these guys are trying to figure out a whole different offense. So there are going to be some opportunities to improve. But we want to see this, especially Chants fans, they want to see this going into the game versus Duquesne. Now, it's not going to be an easy out, but you got to be able to establish the run. I mean, if you cannot establish the run, it is going to be very, very complicated for Grayson McCall to be effective offensively, because you're asking your offensive line to protect your quarterback. That's very, very important. But when teams feel like they can shut down your running game, they're going to pin their ears back and try to go after Grayson McCall, and you definitely don't want to put him in harm's way. You want to be able to have a complementary offense, right? A combination of the run and the pass. So the offensive line did a really good job last week. In my opinion, there was some things that Jacksonville State did, in the running game that made things look as if the offensive line wasn't really being as effective. But I seen opportunities where, they opened up, opportunities, but you have to give credit where credit is due to Jacksonville State Gamecocks defense. I mean, those guys were flying around the football. They have some athletic defensive players. So I'm looking for the Duquesne Dukes to come into town to try to do the same thing. But hopefully the Chants can get that running game going with that three running backs that they have, guys that are extremely talented. But you're also looking for the defense. The defense for the Chants this season has been bend but don't break. Teams have been able to march the ball down the field, but you've seen the Chants kind of close it in, especially with the red zone defense, right? Shouts out to Clayton Isbell. I mean, he had 3 interceptions against UCLA. 3 interceptions in that game. He was appointed the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Week. And we seen the next week, they followed that up. I'm talking the Chants with 2 turnovers. So they have a total of 5 turnovers this season. And we all know that that's the recipe for success, right? Generating turnovers, getting the ball back into your offense hands, getting the ball back into Grayson McCall's hands in order for you to generate points and be able to win football games. When it comes to the Duquesne Dukes, last week they had a tough outing versus West Virginia, but we know what those games are about. Some of those mid-major schools going up against those power conference schools is more like a morale booster for the power conference schools. Those guys are so talented. Sometimes that talent can, just kind of overwhelm some of the mid-major conferences. But I did see some things from quarterback Darius Puentes, the quarterback of Duquesne. He made some really good decisions. And I think that, when you look at his stat line, you look at he has 44% completion percentage. Some people might roll their eyes and be like, oh, man, it's going to be an easy out. But when I watched that West Virginia game, I've seen a lot of passes that should have been caught by his wide receivers. A lot of what is his completion percentage had to do with his wide receivers not really helping him out. I can just think about on the opening drive. There was opportunity for him to get a first down, and his wide receiver ball just went right through his hands. And when you're playing a power conference school like that, I mean, you got to be able to not make very many mistakes. So I think the 44% completion percentage had a lot to do with his wide receivers, but he also has to make better decisions as well. But, I mean, he's a serviceable quarterback. Duquesne is not looking to be throwing the ball all over the place. If they're trying to do that, it's probably because they're trying to cut away because the team has a lead. But they're at a balanced attack. They like to run the football because they have a really good offensive line, a group of guys that have been together for quite some time. And you also have Taj Butts, the leading rusher for the team, averaging about 6.7 yard average. That's a testament to this offensive line. And it's also a testament to Butts, who is a Missouri transfer. And he's been finding lanes and getting opportunities and continuing to move the chains. And I expect for Duquesne to do the same thing against Coastal. Coastal has to be stout up front because this offensive line, once again, these guys are veterans when it comes to the college game. They've been together. They understand one another. And it is honestly the strong point of this team. And if they can get this running game going, That sets up the play action for Darius Puentes to be able to deliver the ball to his wide receivers. Daryl Powell, is a guy who is his leading receiver. This guy can get open. He has a good speed, good route runner. And I just think that if the Chants don't look out, it just can be very, very confusing. So you have to look for this secondary to have a really good game versus Duquesne. But it starts with the defensive line. The defensive line has to neutralize the running game of the Dukes. And if they do that, then I feel like it can be a tough day for Darius Puentes because Darius Puentes is not a guy that can put a team on his back. That's just not how he works, right? I mean, everything has to be flowing a certain way in order for Puentes to be successful, and the running game is the start of it. So if the Chants can neutralize the running game of the Dukes, and it's not going to be easy, I think that this game could easily be a blowout. But you have to have some sound tackling, which the Chants have had. Shouts out to Shane Bruce, had a monster game last week. He had 11 total tackles, and he's looking for more. And this guy's a tackling machine. He's a guy who he has a really good speed, and it's going to be tough for the Dukes to be able to get past this guy. So Shane Bruce had a really good week, and I know he's looking to have an even bigger week. And also, you got to think about the defensive line of Coastal as well. I mean, you got so many different guys out there. Michael Mason, to me, I think he was the unsung hero of last game. Every play, it just seems like he was always around it. He had a sack and a half. And, if he can build on that momentum from last week and bring it into the week, this week versus Duquesne, I think that they'll be fine. Look for Coastal to generate more turnovers. Like I mentioned, Puentes, he makes some smart decisions from time to time, but there are times where he can throw the ball into harm's way. And when he does that, Coastal has to make sure that their secondary or their defensive players are somewhere around the football to be able to take advantage of that. I mentioned Clayton Isbell, having his 3 interceptions for the start of the season. He's a guy that is a ball hawk. If the ball is anywhere in his vicinity, he can catch it. And, the secondary of Coastal has to be ready because he will throw the ball into harm's way. I mean, I've seen a couple times in the game versus West Virginia, he definitely threw the ball into double coverage, triple coverage. So the secondary needs to be ready because he might throw you one, but you have to be ready for it. As far as what I see from the game offensively when it comes to Grayson McCall, I expect efficient game. I expect another efficient game from McCall. Sam Pinckney, he didn't go over 100 yards last week, but I expect for him to have a bigger game. Look, I like Sam Pinckney a lot. I think that he is a very underrated wide receiver. Watching his tape, watching his film, I think he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in college football. All he does is just catch the football. All he does is just move the chains. Grayson McCall, anytime that he needs a big play, just throw it up there to number 15 and he can catch the ball. But you also have another weapon on the other side, which is Jared Brown, a guy who can you can put out there, in the backfield. He can run those jet sweeps. He can get behind the defense. He has that really good speed. And also, he is a disciplined route runner in his own right. Last week, he had a 77-yard touchdown and also to go with 93 yards receiving. That is a weapon, So I expect for the Chants to use Jared Brown in different ways. He is, to me, the secret weapon of the Chants. And if they can continue to use him in a multifaceted ways, you can probably be looking at this guy being considered for Offensive Player of the Year of the Sun Belt. But all in all, I got the Chants winning this football game. I think that the Dukes will keep it, respectable early. But I just think that the talent level of Grayson McCall, the offense, and also just that opportunistic defense, I just think that the Chants should come away easy in this game. But I would love to hear from you. What do you all think about the Coastal Carolina versus Duquesne football game? How do you think the game is going to go? What do you expect from the running game? Do you think it's going to improve? Comment down below, like and share this content. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for checking out the Too Teal Podcast. And to Teal Nation, All I got to say is, Chants up.